Hello, dear gentle marketers. Welcome to the Gentle Business Revolution podcast, a show where we talk about marketing your business by disrupting the current marketing paradigm and changing it to a gentler approach, one that's based on empathy and kindness. I'm Sarah Croce, I'm the host here, and you know that you're in the right place if you are a heart-centered entrepreneur or change maker who is looking for a better way to market your business. Or you are an entrepreneur who is simply tired and sick of the traditional marketing model and are ready for a paradigm shift. Finally, you might also be a marketing impact pioneer. That's someone who's working currently in an organization, in a company who does business for good. If you're a regular here, hey, I'm so happy that you're here. Welcome. And if this is your first time here, welcome. I am so glad that you're here and you are listening to a special Muse episode. This is not the regular episode on this show. I continue to post those on Fridays, but today's episode is one of those extra raw, non-edited, no bells and whistles episodes. Every now and then, I just walk my talk and give myself permission to publish these Muse episodes without bells and whistles. So no intro music, no editing. And today I thought I'd come on and talk about confidence. And I've been thinking about this topic for a while now. In all transparency, yes, I've created a free mini course about confidence that I'll share with you in a bit. But the reason it came up for me, this topic, is because it's really just something that always comes up in all my one-on-one coachings, in the Gentle Marketing course. And yeah, it's just something that we all wish we had more of, right? I'm also thinking about it because I'm currently working on my public speaking skills. As an introvert, that's not my favorite thing to do. Actually, small parenthesis here, it's actually a myth that all introverts hate public speaking. Because on my previous podcast, the Introvert Biz Growth Show, where I had conversations with fellow introverts, I found out that only about 50% of introverts really dreaded public speaking. And the other 50% actually loved it, as long as they didn't have to mingle with the crowd before or after. But they told me that they really stepped into this different persona on stage. And if it meant that they were able to share their message, something that they're really passionate about, they actually loved the spotlight. So that's where I'm trying to get to. So I was saying that I'm working on these public speaking skills, and it's something that doesn't come natural to me. And I don't actually feel comfortable or confident when asked to speak in front of a big crowd. It's interesting because in most other areas of my life and business, and I actually feel quite confident. Or at least people tell me that I come over as confident, even if inside I don't always feel that way. It's interesting. I found that out also from this thing called human design, which is similar to astrology, where you can really also find out how you're wired. And I found out that people are projecting confidence upon me, which is a strange thing. Also, even though I feel mostly confident, I also suffer from imposter syndrome, which is not necessarily the same thing. I looked it up and it says the persistent inability to believe that one's success is deserved or has been achieved as a result of one's own efforts or skills. So that I'm still, kind of suffering from. What about you? Do you feel confident most times? Again, as I mentioned before, confidence is almost always a topic in my one-on-one coachings with clients because it's very tightly related with marketing and showing up. We need confidence to show up in marketing, to put ourselves out there, to post on Facebook, to do videos, to create a podcast. All of this requires the confidence to show up, right? So it's really something that we're all secretly wishing we had more of. So I was kind of reflecting upon the question, what makes one person confident and another person anxious or lacking confidence. And came up with 3 things, and I'm sure there's more, but the 3 things I thought of were some kind of wiring, so how you're born with a certain wiring, so call it genes, call it astrology. So that's the first thing. It's either you're just naturally born confident. I think that actually exists, and some other people are not, and those people kind of have to learn to become more confident. The second thing would be upbringing. So your parents, your siblings, just kind of like your home environment. I think it has a huge influence on your confidence. So if you grew up in a safe environment, if your parents constantly encouraged you, if you were allowed to fail and not being made fun of, if your parents told you that you couldn't achieve anything. So that kind of encouraging, empowering upbringing, I think, has a huge influence on your confidence. So no matter whether you were already born in a certain way and kind of had more confidence to start with, but if that then gets even nourished through your parents, I think that has a big influence. And so for me, I truly believe that, yes, my upbringing really helped me develop this confidence even further. So I had a lot of freedom. I had very supportive parents. I was basically growing up with this idea that I could, do whatever. And I, really saw this reflected in how my parents raised me. So I think that is a big one. So if you were not raised in that kind of environment, then yes, it will be harder because you'll have to kind of first unwire some of these beliefs and really going deep into your childhood and making sure that this wiring that you received from parents and siblings and maybe teachers probably as well, definitely also school environment has a big influence. So unwiring some of that in order to rewire it and then build the confidence from there. The third thing that I thought of was cultural environment. So I grew up in Switzerland, and over here I think we are naturally quite, confident, like this whole neutrality thing and, showing up, knowing what we want. From that aspect, it's definitely, yes, we know what we want. On the other hand, it's also this very humble presence. So we're not overselling ourselves. We're kind of always underselling. Underselling is seen as more, kind of sophisticated. If you are like bragging and talking about yourself in this kind of bragging tone, then you're being seen as a jerk. So cultural environment has a big influence. I heard from Australians that Australia is kind of similar to Switzerland, where it's like always underselling yourself, and it's part of the culture. Where in the US, having lived there and just kind of knowing, from movies and just in general, Americans are very good at, selling themselves, at coming over as confident, sometimes overconfident, depending on who you speak to. So the cultural environment definitely has a huge influence. Think about the Asian culture, probably also way more reserved and not, overly confident. So I think it does also have an impact on your confidence. So how you're raised And then also just how the culture perceives confidence, whether that is perceived as a good thing or maybe not such a good thing. So again, in Europe and especially Switzerland and maybe some other kind of more Nordic countries, confidence is it's good, but don't overdo it, because then all of a sudden you're being perceived as arrogant. I remember meeting my husband Tony, who grew up in Canada. The first thing I thought, wow, this guy is really arrogant. Like he, just shows up and tells me how good he is at certain things, and not, it wasn't in a bragging way, but to us, to me, Swiss, that you just don't do that. You never say, I'm good at something to your friends, or especially, when we met, I was 20. So that was like a big faux pas to say I'm good at something. Still up to this day, I struggle with that. Like the fact that I speak 5 different languages, people always comment on that. I'm like, yeah, it's no big deal. Don't, rather not talk about it. So it's really interesting how upbringing and the culture has a big impact on that. On the other hand, I don't think actually that the personality type has an influence on confidence. So just because you're an introvert doesn't necessarily mean that you're less confident. And because you're an extrovert, you're more confident. I try not to believe that. Probably it comes over like that because it's just, it's just louder in the expression. But I also believe in this inner confidence and just really knowing what you stand for, and don't let yourself convince easily, or so there's this inner confidence maybe and the outer confidence. So I think the personality type doesn't actually influence the confidence. I'd love to have a conversation about that if you think otherwise, though. And finally, I really do believe that confidence can be strengthened. It's like a muscle, and it can grow if you want it to grow. It's funny because up till fairly recently, I actually didn't want to get better at public speaking. I was like, I have no interest in speaking on a stage. That's just not my thing. And I have no interest in getting better at it, even though people told me, oh, you should. And I'm like, why? Now, though, that I really, so much believe in this idea of gentle business, gentle marketing, I'm like, yeah, I actually do want to, talk to a bigger crowd and share the message. So all of a sudden, I'm like, well, maybe I do need to actually work on the competence to increase my confidence. So it's interesting that I think, yes, it can be strengthened, but there needs to be really a will, and there needs to be some kind of purpose behind it. So all of this to say that I recently created a new mini course on 10 gentle ways to strengthen your confidence. It's a 10 video mini series with my tips on how to gently strengthen your confidence. And of course, it's not a cookie cutter type course, because you know quite well that confidence is not just this 10 bullet point list. It really is part of the inner work, and some of it is going to be being, and some of it is going to be doing. So that's what I've created. And for this episode, I've picked 3 of the 10 ways to strengthen your confidence that I'd like to comment on. And I'll do that in a second, but if you'd like to check out the full mini video course, you can check it out at sarahsanacroce.com/gentle confidence. Okay, so here we go. Tip number 1 is get to know yourself. So I think I've mentioned this on this podcast before. If there's one thing I've really become an expert at these past 3 to 4 years, it's knowing myself and really understanding who I am, what my values are, my superpowers, how I want to show up in the world, and who I want to work with. So I'd recommend to start with spending some time getting to know yourself. Maybe you start with a personality assessment. Maybe you hire a coach. Maybe you do some sessions with a therapist. I did, and it was well worth it to dig deeper and release some of these old limiting beliefs. However way you want to do it, I think growing more confident starts with going back to the roots. Tip number 2 is to get more competent. It's clear that if you're new at something, you have less confidence compared to doing something for the 100th time. When I first started giving public conferences, I was so nervous even to speak in front of 20 people. Then I got used to it and now easily speak in front of 100 people. However, I've never spoken on big stages in front of 500 or 1,000 people. So that's what I'm doing right now, investing in that skill. And I hired a speaking coach, and I will have to keep practicing in order to feel more competent. I probably won't feel 100% confident for my first talk, but at least I feel competent and I feel that I have earned the right to be there. So the second tip is to get more competent, invest in your skills. Tip number 3 is to practice gratitude. Yep, you heard that right. Practice gratitude. Gratitude helps with so many things, I think, including confidence, because if you are grateful for what you already have, instead of always focusing on what you're missing, then you'll naturally feel more confident about your current situation as well. Personally, I write down 3 things every night, actually most nights, in my gratitude journal. And yes, sometimes they are the same things, but that doesn't matter. So really focusing on the things that you already have, that you are already good at, that go well in your business and in your life. Practicing gratitude increases your confidence. So those are 3 of the 10 tips. And again, it's a short video course and also comes with a worksheet for reflection. And my hope is that after going through this mini course, you'll feel encouraged to be yourself, empowered to continue working on your competence, understanding that confidence can be learned step by step. And also you feel enough because you are enough. If you'd like to get the rest of the tips, just head on over to sarahsenacroce.com/gentle confidence. I'll put the link in the description of this episode as well, so you can find it there too. And remember, it's free. Don't know if I actually mentioned that, but yes, it's free. And another thing I want to add, please don't see me as your confidence guru. I really haven't figured it all out. And as I shared before, there are still areas in my life and business where I lack confidence and where I will have to keep working on. I hope this mini course will help you show up, get heard and seen. And I'll be back on Friday with the final episode of the season and a book update. Speak to you soon. Bye.